are top-level members of the Trump administration colluding on ways to oust President Trump? Are members of Trump's cabinet and National Security Council plotting a coup? Is National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster among those whom former Trump political advisor Roger Stone alleges, see here and here, have been having conversations about removing Trump from office? There is ample reason for seriously considering the stunning allegations. And there is good reason to believe that General McMaster, shown, would figure prominently in any such effort. Ever since his election, there has been speculation that the deep state, or the establishment, the globalists who operate as the permanent government of the United States, through both Democratic and Republican administrations would attempt to remove President Trump from office, by one means or another. This is not tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, it has been obvious from day one in office, actually, even before his inauguration, that this president is being subjected to unprecedented, coordinated attacks from within and without, including most especially from the internationalist political operatives who control our intelligence agencies, the State Department, the National Security Council, and numerous other agencies in the federal bureaucracy. These operatives have engaged in a steady beat of critically timed leaks to their deep state allies at the New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, CNN and other organs of the virulently anti-Trump mainstream media thought cartel. The leaks, many of which carry criminal penalties for releasing classified national security information, all aim at crippling and damaging President Trump politically. Together with the non-stop attacks accusing him of racism, misogyny, sexual harassment, Islamophobia, xenophobia, etc., the deep state opponents hope to bludgeon President Trump until he is sufficiently damaged, to the point that he can be removed by impeachment, or invoking the 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. If those efforts fail, there is always resort to the more extreme option, Plan C. The 25th Amendment solution has been pushed for months now by The Atlantic, the National Constitution Center, CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post, and the other usual suspects. Under this controversial application of the constitutional provision for presidential succession, a majority of the cabinet, together with the vice president, Mike Pence, would declare President Trump unfit for office due to inability to discharge the powers or duties of his office. Since President Trump is not physically incapacitated, the self-appointed removers have relentlessly attacked him on supposed mental and psychological infirmities. Since President Trump would not likely concede to such a soft coup, the matter would then go to Congress, which would need to support the removal by a two-thirds vote margin in both the House and Senate. CFR's Max Boot, Cri du Coeur from inside the deep state. Where does Herbert Raymond McMaster fit in all of this? He is, most likely, one of the top deep state actors orchestrating the moves to undermine President Trump. As we reported on December 29, deep state boasts, "We're sabotaging Trump from the inside." McMaster has been repeatedly singled out for praise by the anti-Trump globalists, especially those associated with the deep state's premier brain trust, the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. Most recently, the CFR has congratulated McMaster, a CFR member, and Nadia Shodlow, also CFR, for sabotaging President Trump's first National Security Strategy, NSS, report, for cleverly, and subversively, replacing Trumpian notions, such as defending national sovereignty and promoting America First, with the internationalist, pro-UN, pro-world government positions that have become traditional in the higher levels of the Democrat-Republican duopoly that has run the country for much of the past century. CFR senior fellow Max Boot, a Republican who endorsed Hillary Clinton for president, approvingly described the McMaster-Shodlow contributions to the Trump NSS as a cri du coeur, cry of the heart, from inside the deep state signaling to the outside world that Trumpian thinking has not entirely taken over the U.S. government. Yes, And it was also signaling to other deep state operatives that anti-Trump opponents within the highest levels of the administration believe they are ascendant and have such power and influence that they can get away with thumbing their noses at their boss. Moreover, it would appear to be one of many signals emanating from the deep state's network that the time may be soon approaching to make the big play. As we reported, Max Boot's essay is accompanied on the CFR website by similar praise for McMaster's NSS subversion from CFR President Richard Haas and the CFR's Senior Fellow for Global Governance Stuart Patrick. Boosting McMaster, trashing Trump. Another of the many important recent signals in that respect is the sneak preview of the NSS provided by Kate Brannon in The Atlantic, one of the media attack dogs most relentlessly baying at Trump, snapping at his heels, and lunging for his throat. Her piece, Trump's National Security Strategy is Decidedly Non-Trumpian, carried this subtitle: An exclusive preview of the White House's plan highlights the wide gulf between what the president says and what he does. The Atlantic's exclusive preview, 10 days before the White House released the document, was made possible, Ms. Brannon informs the reader, thanks to a Trump administration staffer who reviewed a draft of the document, and shared key excerpts with me. The fact that a source high enough up in the administration, in the White House, the NSC, or the Cabinet, would leak the document, especially to a hostile reporter at a hostile publication, should confirm to any sentient being that President Trump has backstabbers close to the throne. A few classically Trumpian themes are the wall, concern over trade and balances, but much of the document reflects the values and priorities of the president's predecessors, Brannon notes, regarding the NSS. Preempting the CFR's Max Boot, she credits this continuity, which contradicts the president's stated policies, to McMaster and Shodlow. The draft document, she says, was spearheaded by Nadia Shodlow, Senior Director for Strategy on the National Security Council, NSC. Shodlow is regarded as a conservative foreign policy expert based on her experience in the establishment think tank world, including stints at the Council on Foreign Relations and the Smith-Richardson Foundation. She joined the NSC at Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster's request after he took over as National Security Advisor following retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's resignation in February. As we noted in our previous article, the pundits and media-cited experts invariably try to misdirect readers, viewers and bolster Shodlow's credibility by describing her as conservative, implying, of course, that her globalist ties and views should not be viewed with suspicion. And, naturally, Brannon has no trouble finding academic experts to weigh in favor of the McMaster-Shodlow team and against Trump. The NSS drafters did an admirable job of trying to square the president's views with long-standing American principles and interests, but the variance with the president's own behavior is so wide as to make the document incredible, former NSC and State Department staffer Corey Schick told her. Besides being a CFR member, which Brannon doesn't mention, Schick is a fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution and co-editor of the book Warriors and Citizens with Trump's Defense Secretary James Mattis. Mattis and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson are two of the other top-level administration members that receive generally positive reviews from the establishment swamp creatures and their media compadres. Like McMaster, Mattis and Tillerson are presented as being moderating influences on an otherwise dangerous and out-of-control president. Brannon also quotes former Obama NSC official Joshua Geltzer, CFR, now a professor at Georgetown Law School. Whatever value the language of an NSS has, that value depends on the credibility of the deeds and other words that might back it up, Joshua Geltzer said. Sadly, there's been too much in the past year designed to stoke fear and sow schisms to make credible language of unity, however much I do crave such unity. Among the many alleged sins that Brannon accuses President Trump of is that he has undermined the rule of law repeatedly, personally attacking specific judges, the federal judiciary more broadly, as well as the FBI, the Justice Department and their leaders, some of whom he picked. That is rich, coming from a rabidly partisan journalist who assists and praises those who violate our laws and jeopardize our national security, and whose publication has ceaselessly attacked the president. The Atlantic, by the way, is one of the many establishment media organs that endorsed Hillary Clinton. The Atlantic's publisher, David G. Bradley, is a member of the CFR, as is veteran left-wing correspondent James Fallows. Bradley sold the majority share in the company to the Emerson Collective, a left-wing outfit led by Laurene Powell Jobs, CFR, the billionaire widow of Apple Incorporated co-founder Steve Jobs, but has stayed on to continue building the Washington, D.C.-based media empire's influence among the swamp supporters. Bradley, Jobs, and the folks at The Atlantic are so venomously anti-Trump that when Politico fired reporter Julie Ayoff for an extremely crude F-bomb tweet suggesting an incestuous relationship between President Trump and his daughter Ivanka, The Atlantic immediately hired Ayoff to cover politics and national security. The Atlantic's Kate Brennan also writes for Foreign Policy, a publication launched in 1970 by the globalist Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, but purchased in 2013 by the CFR-dominated Washington Post Company, now rebranded as Graham Holdings Company. Writers for Foreign Policy tilt heavily to the Democratic port side, and many are prominent swamp denizens. Like the CFR's own in-house journal, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy depends heavily on CFR experts, but takes a more openly progressive stance on most issues. McMaster's Night of the Long Knives, purging Trump loyalists. On May 9, 2017, Brennan rushed to McMaster's defense with a Foreign Policy article titled, "The Knives Are Out for Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster." In the White House Game of Thrones for Morons, Brennan wrote, "Steve Bannon is trying to turn the president against his national security advisor." Brennan's foreign policy piece was playing off of a similar piece written the day before by Eli Lake for Bloomberg News titled, "Washington Loves General McMaster, but Trump Doesn't." Michael Bloomberg, of course, is a member of the CFR and his company is a CFR President's Circle corporate member. Lake and Brennan paint a picture of the noble, duty-bound, brilliant McMaster besieged by ideological cretins and morons. Brennan's colleague at The Atlantic, Rosie Gray, penned a similar piece titled, "The War Against H.R. McMaster," in which she warned that the National Security Advisor's job is on the line, and the pro-Trump media have launched an all-out assault against him. The pro-Trump media to which she referred, Breitbart News, The Daily Caller, The Free Beacon, InfoWars, and others, had indeed been going after McMaster, and for good reason. McMaster is seen, correctly, in this writer's opinion, as leading a slow-motion coup, gradually replacing Trump loyalists with CFR globalists. McMaster is not the mastermind of this operation, he is merely the point man for the deep state. The takedown of General Flynn was orchestrated by operatives above McMaster's pay grade to clear the way for his ascendancy. The same operatives, no doubt, maneuvered to make sure that Trump would not replace Flynn with Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, an early Trump loyalist who still remains as Executive Secretary and Chief of Staff of the NSC. Over the past several months, McMaster and his deep state enablers have whittled away the Trump loyalists to the point where the president has become essentially surrounded by CFR globalists and their minions. If Bannon and company had the knives out for McMaster, it appears McMaster and company had the longer knives, and more of them, and were a step or two ahead of the Trumpsters. Here is a short list of some of the significant casualties among the Trump loyalists whom McMaster is credited with giving the axe since General Flynn's departure. Steve Bannon, NSC member and chief White House advisor. Richard Higgins, NSC Director for Strategic Planning. Colonel Derek Harvey, NSC Middle East Advisor. Ezra Cohen-Watnick, NSC Senior Director for Intelligence Programs. Tara Dahl, NSC Deputy Chief of Staff. Adam Lovinger, NSC Senior Director for Strategic Assessment. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President. Thus, McMaster, who is widely recognized as being at odds with key planks of President Trump's agenda, and has, reportedly, openly mocked the president at a dinner, calling him a dope and an idiot. With the intelligence of a kindergartner, he has gained strategic high ground in the Trump administration. While purging Trump loyalists, he also kept on board, and in some cases promoted, Obama holdovers and CFR globalists. Key players among McMaster's minions include Nadia Shodlow, CFR, Dinah Habib Powell, CFR and Trilateral Commission, although she has indicated she will be leaving sometime early in 2018, Victoria Coates, who cites Donald Rumsfeld and K.T. McFarland, both CFR members, as her mentors. Among the more notorious Obama NSC holdovers whom McMaster protected are Abigail Grace, Fernando Cutts, Mary Lynn, and Andrea Hall, who is reported to be the source of critical leaks from the Trump NSC. In addition, McMaster campaigned, unsuccessfully, to bring Obama CIA operative Linda Weisgold in to replace Trump loyalist Cohen Watnick. She's the one who drafted the infamous Benghazi Talking Points memo to deceive Congress and exonerate Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and President Barack Obama from responsibility in the deadly attack. Trump nixed that appointment. However, McMaster did succeed in bringing Chris Borman, a radical Hamas PLO apologist, to be NSC point man on Israel. Having made many unwise appointments, President Trump is now finding himself increasingly surrounded by avowed enemies and smiling backstabbers. The McMaster appointment could prove to be one of the most disastrous choices, since the NSC chief and his minions already are playing a crucial role in what are obviously deep state efforts to remove President Trump. Whether that ultimately comes down to Plan A, Plan B, or Plan C, McMaster will be a key establishment agent in issuing critical orders to carry it out, most especially if it comes to Plan C, removing the president by assassination. These are, obviously, very, very serious charges, and we would not be entertaining the possibility that such heinous, criminal schemes could actually be in the offing except for the fact that steadily mounting evidence points inescapably to that conclusion. The methodical setting up of pieces and removing of others, together with the coordinated, relentless fake news campaign, shows a chessboard in play in which the enemies of freedom are moving toward checkmate. President Trump still has a window of opportunity to forestall a coup, but his time may be running out. McMaster is the swamp creature who, arguably, now presents the greatest internal threat not only to the president's agenda, but to his life. President Trump should listen to his loyal base, which has been urging him to fire McMaster for the past several months. If he fails to do so, he puts not only himself but the entire nation at risk. A political coup, whether by Plan A, B, or C, would throw the republic into a constitutional crisis, one which would likely prove fatal for freedom. McMaster should go, now.